And you're live.
Thank you. If I could get approval of our previous meeting minutes.
Make that motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Have two pieces coming before us and a brief presentation at the end of that. The first piece is too many screens open. Ordinance ratifying the actions of the Director of Public Service and Contracting. Let me start over. Ordinance ratifying the actions of the Director of Public Service and Contracting scenarios for the emergency repairs at the Cascade parking deck, authorizing payment therefore and declaring an emergency. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Yes, in Cascade parking deck, we did a full evaluation of that deck and we found a failing actually beam or pillar close to the ramp. So if you came in off of Mill Street and went straight through the gate and you're going to go up a ramp like you're going to Lock 4, that pillar there, we had to reinforce it from the basically the 5th floor all the way up. On each floor was the steel posts. So we actually contracted with Tamarius Incorporated to do that emergency repair. And part of this project also, when it was around the same time that the Bowery, the new development opened up. So the ramp from the floor down the ramp and into the Bowery building, there's an entrance there through the deck right above. Like if you came in from Lock 4, if you look directly to the right and above is that entrance. That wall was leaking and obviously causing some problems, especially in the winter with freezing. So while we had Tamarius on site, they removed all the loose and particles on that wall. They sounded it to make sure structurally it was okay. And then they actually put some waterproofing up there to prevent the water, divert the water from this area so it wouldn't get onto the walkway and then freeze in the winter. So with that, I will take any questions.
Any questions from committee members? See anybody? None from committee members. Any questions from council? No, none there either. What's your pleasure, Mr. Leto?
A consent's fine, Madam Chair.
Okay. Can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We have one more piece before us. Resolution declaring it necessary to improve various off-street parking facilities in the Kimball District and the Kent Road Business District by the sealing, resurfacing, and repairing, painting, parking spaces, strips, sweeping, removing snow, cleaning sewer openings, providing lawn, turf, shrub, and tree maintenance, litter and other general cleanup, and otherwise improving and maintaining the same, and all when and where necessary. Mr. Leto?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Yes, this is our annual assessment to the off-street parking district of Kenmore neighborhood. This is actually true costs. So we take what snow removal costs were, any landscaping we do. It was actually less than it was the previous year. So we submit those for payment to them. Then we bring it to council. There was no objections by the property owners for this. So consent's fine.
Okay. Any questions from any council members? Any questions from committee members or council members? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So can I get a motion for consent?
Make the motion to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. And we have nothing else coming before us, but we do have a brief presentation from Chief Travis Capper as a brief presentation on diversity and inclusion initiatives. So, Tina, take it away.
Madam Chair, if I could have just 1 second. Did you need any more information about the tank maintenance that we sent you?
Nope, I got it. Read through it. Nope.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Figure out how to turn that noise on my phone, my laptop off eventually.
Good afternoon. This is Travis Capper. I'm with engineering, and I'm here with Sheena Fain. And we're going to make a brief presentation, kind of the economic diversity inclusion, basically year-end report at the end of 2020. So this includes up to the end of 2020. And I'll let Sheena start off, and then we'll kind of go back and forth going through this report. And we can take questions anytime you have them. Just feel free to interrupt.
Perfect. All right. Good afternoon. I am Sheena. I'm the Contract Compliance and Supplier Diversity Officer for the City of Akron. And as Travis stated, we are here to present the City of Akron Economic Diversity and Inclusion in Year of 2020 report. The report is split up into 4 sections. The first section is the Akron Waterways Renew construction projects. And then we have the Akron Engineering Bureau projects, which Travis will cover, and also our economic diversity and inclusion outreach for the second half and our supplier diversity program. So for our Akron Waterways Renews workforce data, this comes directly from our LPC tracker. There was a court ruling back in 2019, which stated that you cannot mandate a prime to use local talent for projects. So this is why you see the variation in the various projects as far as workforce development. And our next screen is basically our economic inclusion data report. And the blue line is what's been paid as of December 31st, 2020 to our subs. And the gray line is a representation of what the primes actually stated their commitment to subs. And then the red line represents the goals. And we have more granular data here as well that actually reflects the graph. So this shows the projects, the primes, the original amount of the contract, the total certifying goal, and then also current paid to the subs, and then the percentages. And of this, one prime did not show any payment to a sub, and that was Lockhart for an estimate of $1.1 million. There were 8 primes that showed payments to certified contractors, but they did not meet the goal. The average contract was a little bit over $35 million. The contract ranged from 1.6 to $148 million. And those contractors are Great Lakes, H.M. Miller, Kenmore, Kinney, and also Tamaris. And those ranges are Great Lakes with 15.09%, H&M Miller with 8.82%, H&M Miller again with 9.74%, and Kenmore with 10.37%, Kinney with 13.02%, and Tamaris with 16.14%. And then of that also, we had 5 prime contractors that exceeded the contract certifying goals, which is always great to hear. And that was H&M Miller with 22.38%, and also with 28.1%, Cavero with 21.83%, and Kenmore with 3.8%. Travis?
All right, so Sheena went over kind of projects that we had through our AWR program. We also do track just kind of our normal AEB construction projects. So these are ones that are not AWR projects. They could be a sewer, a roadway, whatever. Like Sheena said, once they passed the law that we could no longer require local hiring on the project, we're still kind of tracking that, but obviously projects lately have not been to the 50%, which is what our goal was. But we are kind of trying to track that to show, basically what's happening out there. For inclusion, because a lot of these projects have different outside funding sources, the goals sometimes are all over the place. So if you have an ODOT project, ODOT, gives us what the DBE goal is. We don't set it ourselves. So Some of these have lower goals, and then kind of towards the right side of the graph, those are more of our normal projects where it's either local funding or whatever that we can use our 18% goal. So you can see some of these projects, and a lot of them are still ongoing, have some room to go to get to the goal, and some are definitely above the goal. Once again, here's just kind of the numbers, and maybe you can't look at them now, but we'll take any questions on them if you look at them later and have some questions on them. But these are just through the end of the year, so some of these projects are ongoing, and their numbers, the percentages are higher, as we speak today, but these are just at the end of the year. So definitely a lot of money. There's some big projects in there. And then the trends, it's kind of like the AWR program. The trends there's not really any trends. They're kind of all over the place. You have projects that meet the goal and some don't, and it's not like it's one contractor or another. Some contractors, same contractor have a project that can't meet the goal, and then they exceed on the next one. So I think our average is pretty good, but project by project, there's definitely some variations in them. And then the type of project, it doesn't seem to matter either. Like transportation projects, some of those do have a lower ODOT goal, which is probably easier to make, but if it's a City of Akron goal, then it'll be 18% instead of like maybe a ODOT 8% goal or whatever. So anyways, we kind of looked at all of them, and there really isn't a trend one way or the other, but I think we are definitely getting better as the years go on, and contractors are used to what we require. We did have a couple different outreach events last week. Last year we want to report on. The first one is our All Akron Engineering student program. It's for students to generate interest in the engineering fields for students, either juniors or seniors in high school. And this is the 6th cycle on this, and it's very popular. I think we had, maybe on the next slide there, we had like 44 different students signed up over all 8 high schools in Akron. It's a pretty good cross section there, as you see, 27 males, 17 females, and all different demographics. So it's a pretty good cross section of the high schools. And you can see on the next slide, we have I think there's 19 firms that have signed up. And what they do, they'll take a student or two or whatever and hire them for the summer and just basically introduce them to engineering. And, they obviously don't get a lot of work out of them, because it's just, it's to get the student excited in engineering, and hopefully, after high school, go into an engineering field in college or technical school or whatever. So, like I said, it's the sixth season on this, and it's been pretty successful, and we have more and more students sign up every year. And actually, they'll just be starting work here, in June. So this culminates into a summer's work program for them. And then we did have one outreach event in November. We worked with the Akron Urban League, and we had 65 people attended. It was basically to learn about opportunities that you could get through the city. We had a one-on-one session. We had a session earlier in the week, and then we scheduled one-on-one sessions later in the week, and we introduced looks like 16 different minority small businesses to basically what the city has to offer as far as opportunities, whether it be through engineering or it be through our purchasing division or our water reclamation, there's all kinds of different projects and different kinds of work we have out there, and we just want to make sure everybody knows what's coming and knows how to find these projects and these opportunities and knows how to sign up for them. So, and then we'll certainly be scheduling other events, as we go through the year, but that's the one we had last year. All right, you can go on, Sheena. Yep.
Okay. And so for our supplier diversity program, our initiative is the City of Akron Supplier Diversity Program is a strategy that includes supporting our suppliers and partners through embracing the importance of having inclusive supply chains. We are committed as a city to creating and sustaining diverse suppliers and building viable relationships with those suppliers that reflect the market, our clients, and the communities that we serve and live in. So I've been here a total of 40 days so far. And I decided to put together a SWOT analysis, which is the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, just through my observation and my own research. One of the strengths that we have here at the City of Akron is the brand recognition. I've had boots on the ground. I've been out. I've been in networking events so far. I've done 3 total. I've met with maybe 50 people so far. I've been able to connect about 7 or 8 people with just different opportunities within the City of Akron. Some of our weaknesses are our process flows. It's very difficult for our vendors, our small companies to understand how to do business with the City of Akron and exactly know where they are in the process. And then also our accountability to our primes and also our culture that we have set up. If we look through the graphs that we recently shown, you'll see that some of the primes, they committed a certain amount. They didn't meet that amount. And I think it's important that we understand why and understand how we're able to build capacity for our smaller firms. Some of our opportunities are our technology and building partnerships with other organizations in the Akron area. And then one of the threats is just our lack of certified firms that we have here in the Akron area. So this is currently the work in progress that I'm working on. I've created a pipeline of over 220 minority firms, and it's growing day by day. We are currently implementing a vendor management system that will allow us to be transparent with our vendors. They can easily and readily access our bid opportunities that are available, providing training on how to conduct business with the City of Akron. And then I've also been conducting some vendor site visits where small businesses, they invite me out to their firm. They give me, a presentation, or they kind of walk me through, what they do and how, I work with how can I help them, do business with the City of Akron. And that is what we call basically building capacity. I've also been on site in the water department twice so far, and I've been out in the field understanding exactly, how they work, what kind of work they're doing, and seeing if there's any synergy between the City of Akron and some of the smaller firms. And we've also we've broken down several projects to help small firms. So currently right now we have one listed, the City Sidewalk Project. And basically the reason why we took the project and we broke it down was so that a smaller firm would have the opportunity to bid on it without the heavy bond requirements for the project. And so far we have, I believe, 5 plan holders so far. And these are just some of the partnerships that I've been able to build or that were currently already here. We have our community partners like our Urban League, our Bounce, the Akron Public Library, the Chamber. And then also I've been working to build our business partnerships. And so business partnerships, I mostly define those as for-profit businesses. They have very similar goals and initiatives within their firms and working to see how we can help each other. So one is Google. We recently partnered with Google to offer some free classes and courses to entrepreneurs to help run their business smoothly. 96% of minority companies are solopreneurs. So they work in their business, they work on their business after hours, and they need tools to assist and help them. Another company that I've partnered with is Apple Growth Partner. They're located in Wall Haven. and they are accounting firm. And so we are planning a course in June to help small businesses get through their accounting in order to get certified. So helping them put together their documents for their certification. Are there any questions?
I have one question, but it's not really a question. I just asked Travis, so he's going to take care of it. If you could get that PowerPoint presentation over to all the council, I'd appreciate it. My eyes aren't as young as they used to be.
All right.
I do have a question, Travis. Maybe you can answer, or maybe even Sheena. Do you guys know the percentage between you when you talked about the goals and the percentages from these different as it relates to like economic inclusion? Can you get us the percentages pre-COVID and post-COVID? Is that possible to do?
It might be tough. Some of these projects are like, been going on for 2 or 3 years. They obviously agreed to a goal, back before COVID. Now, whether, I don't know if they'll use that, as an excuse, hey, we couldn't meet the goal because of COVID, but I don't know if we really noticed any issues with that. Yeah. I mean, the work's out there. It's just maybe taking longer to get done, because of delays or workforce, but the same work is still having to be done. So.
Madam Chair, if I could just answer that question.
Yes.
Travis is right. On some of these projects where the percentages are low right now, currently, one in particular is down, the Headworks project is low. Well, the rebar has been on delay because of COVID. And if the rebar was delivered and installed by the contractor, which is a sub, those percentages would be higher. So it hasn't changed much, but mostly what it's had the effect on is delivery of materials. So before all the questions start, I just want to thank Travis, and obviously I really want to thank Sheena for all the work she's done in the short amount of time. When we met with her, when she first came aboard, we talked about the sidewalk program, and she kind of touched on that. So we broke part of that out and attracting a smaller company. But we also talked to her about the lead service program and removing lead services. And as you know, Mayor Horgan's committed, to remove those lead services. So when we were talking to Sheena, and I wasn't sure if she knew what a lead service was or not and what it took, but right away she said, I need to go out to the water department, meet with the staff, meet with the people that are installing these. So when she meets with these contractors, she can tell them, you need this size of a machine, and it's not real deep. And she can direct them if they can't go afford to buy a $150,000 machine, well, they can go to a rental place and it'll fit in their budget, and they may only need that machine for a month. So those are the things that she asked, and we really appreciate, getting a new fresh eyes on this, on our whole overall project. So she really has helped, and I just want to thank her for the work she's done in this short amount of time.
Awesome. Okay, so do I have any questions from committee members? No committee members. I see a lot of blue hands, but I don't see any committee. So hold on. I think I got somebody now. Okay, so I'm gonna start at the top. Okay, Councilwoman Mobian.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I'm hearing static. Again, thank you for this report. I kind of wanted to go back to some of your slides, but I think Madam Chair has asked you to send them to us, so I'll be able to look at them closer. Have you found any information that will help us understand, in addition to the problem that most of the vendors have told us over the years that they can't find qualified people, but have you found specific areas that you're able to see that the vendors are able to hire and fulfill obligations in? And have you found some more troubling areas that perhaps we can use, the investment we made with Start State to help us start filling those gaps in terms of helping people get the necessary training if the training is there? I think my question may be kind of loaded, but basically I'm just trying to get a sense of what you're finding out there. And I like the fact that, is it Sheena? That's her name?
Yeah.
Is Sheena? Okay.
Yes.
I like the fact that Sheena has done a SWOT analysis and is trying to figure out, okay, where are we, what we need, and that kind of thing, and our strengths and weaknesses and stuff. But what are you finding out there in terms of, because I know we've been hearing a lot over the years that we meet with vendors and they tell us what they can't do, but I just want to know what are they able to do, and we can talk a little bit about how we can meet some of those other needs.
I think there's been a couple instances where maybe a vendor doesn't know how to do something, and if the prime contractor, I mean, it's a commitment for them, definitely, basically kind of take them under their wing and help them along. It makes a big difference. If a prime just calls a vendor and says, can you do this? A lot of times the answer is no. They've never, this subcontractor's probably never done this before. But in the instances where the prime has, put some effort into there and kind of been out there and helped show them, how to do something and kind of provide some training for them, we're seeing how that's paying off later down the road. It might be a couple years later down the road, but early on in this program, I'm thinking of a couple of subs, in my mind that have come a long way. But that was a big commitment on the side of the prime contractor doing that. And as far as training always helps. I mean, like Start State or whatever, that would help immensely. I mean, some of these subs though, it's more than just training. It's just work experience, getting out there and digging holes in the street. You got to do that a few times and learn some things before, you feel comfortable with it, maybe doing it yourself,
So when you talk about prime, you're talking about the H.M. Millers and the Kenmores and all of them.
Right.
And it sounds like the numbers with Miller are better. He's a black vendor, is that correct?
H.M. Miller? No, he's not.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
So all of the vendors are owned by white individuals?
Trying to think.
The prime ones you're
I
talking
don't know
about.
if all. No. Some are women owned.
So who is the vendor that seems to be willing to get out there and work with the subs and helping people learn how to do what they need to do? Because that's part of the challenge.
You mentioned, H.M. Miller, they were very good. They one instance they kind of really helped canal construction. Jeff Long and canal construction basically kind of worked through a lot of issues. He had experience in doing some of that, but not to the level sometimes we need, on these projects. And the problem is, if you haven't been through it enough times, you can really get burned. If you give the city a price, okay, I'll go do this emergency repair for $30,000 and it actually costs you $50,000. You can't do that very many times and stay in business. So H.M. Miller definitely has helped canal construction kind of learn the ropes. And right now they've done a lot of work for us. Canal has.
I think what we're going to do, and to this point, Councilwoman Amobian, with Sheena's help, is, starting with the sidewalk program. A $50,000 contract that's a huge endeavor for some of these small contractors. So that's where we're starting. So instead of a $500,000 program, even if they were able to do the work, to Sheena's point, they couldn't get bonded. And then, you know, just the other logistics that go along with it. So being more purposeful with these projects, the $50,000 project and the lead service, instead of putting out something for $1 million, we're going to put out something for $50,000 or $60,000. And with Sheena's help and with the water department, they're going to work very closely with these contractors so they don't get in trouble. Okay, to follow through on our bidding process, following through on all the paperwork, and then obviously getting the work done. So one thing we have found, whether you're a prime or a sub, they're all really, and I think we saw that recently in a couple of reports, it's hard to get people right now, especially people, trained people. So I think the primes are going through the same problem as the small contractors, as finding the labor to do the work. So.
Okay. Well, just keep at it, and thank you very much for your efforts. And just please keep us informed as to what you're learning and what you're doing. I mean, we are committed to doing this. It's going to be, some time.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilman Freeman?
Hey, thank you very much. Did I hear it said that we're foregoing bonding on the sidewalk program?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. I thought in Sheena's presentation, by the way, welcome Sheena. Thank you for all you're doing. I thought I'd heard something about that they wouldn't be required to be bonded. So.
No, that's not the case.
Okay, very good.
We actually have a business partner that we are working with currently that's able to help our smaller contractors with getting bonding.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Councilman Mallett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you so much, Ms. Fain and Mr. Capper, for the presentation. I think it's really great that, we have these numbers and that this is something that, we're keeping track of and, trying to work on getting better at. I guess the one thing that I had a question about was the goals and the accountability. So, if a firm is not meeting the goal, are there mechanisms that we can look at, perhaps not for the current projects, but perhaps for future projects that will create some kind of accountability? Are there, perhaps in other jurisdictions? Is that something that we're thinking about?
Absolutely. That is something that Travis actually mentioned to Travis earlier today was, and even in my presentation, was really the accountability piece. Because a lot of times what happens is that we just want to get the work done, right? And we sometimes forget about the smaller guys, the smaller contractors. And so we need to create accountability up front to say, hey, these are our expectations and how do you plan to meet those? And if you're unable to, then when we have our touch points, we need to understand and know why. So that way we can report back. As of right now, that's not something that we currently do just for the culture, but that's something that we're working towards right now.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, we do award on projects, if we bid a project, it's lowest and best. So, we have to look at the lowest bidder first, and if their bid is, has a goal way low and the second low bidder has a goal way high, we can take that into account as far as who's the best bidder, But we just always, if it's $1 difference, nobody cares. But if it's, $1 million difference, then, it's a bigger question we have to ask ourselves. So
Certainly. And, I appreciate those comments from both of you. I know, obviously no one wants to get sued. And these choices in terms of picking contractors are not simple. But if we could look at some mechanisms like clawbacks or things like that, I think that'd be really interesting. And I just really appreciate the work that everyone's doing. I'm sure it's more than the two of you. And if we could, have this discussion every 6 months or so, I think it'd be really positive. So thank you.
Are there any other questions from council members? Not seeing any. Wait, Councilman Neal?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Ms. Fame, for the presentation. I caught some of it, so if I'm asking questions that have been answered, please forgive me. One, when you're seeing if these prime contractors meet goals, is this in relation to them, the subs that they work with, or is this also in relation to the number of percentage of workers on the project?
No, this would be all sub work. The whether they're local workers on the project, since that's now illegal, we track it, but we don't hold anybody to those kind of goals. But the goals we're talking about is, subbing a certain percentage of the project to an MBE or minority business, or a small business or whatever. Yep.
Do we have a way of tracking to see how many, how diverse their workforce is? Is that under another department, or do we have a way of tracking that as well? Because I'm sure that's the one concern we get every time somebody drives by a project, is that they don't see themselves on the project.
Yeah, we honestly don't track that, but I think our program can track that if you want numbers on it.
I would strongly urge that we track that. And then as we move forward, I like the part that I heard Mr. Ludlow say about, and I think others have referred to it, about if there's a way where we can, when a contract comes up, if someone keeps winning a contract, if we find out that they're not meeting the goal of having working with subs on there, if that could definitely go into the equation. But also, if we are able to get more subs that don't have the equipment, but they're renting this equipment, if we could work with them in a way of wherever they're renting it, if the city also rents equipment, using our leverage to make sure that they are getting the best rate when they rent that equipment, leveraging ourselves that way. And then, I heard Mr. Freeman talk about bonding, but I know that you said it's bonded. Any other kind of way we can use our weight to help put our subcontractors in a stronger position, if that's with bonding, if that's with access to capital, making sure that if they're having problems going to certain banks or certain financing institutions, certain companies, if we have money there and we find out that people are having problems, we use our weight where we're invested. So again, I apologize if I asked some questions or made some comments that others have, but I would definitely like for us to have something in place where we are tracking not just the subs, but who's on the project. Is their workforce diverse? Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
I sure am. Thank you, Sheena and Travis, for that presentation. And we will wait for Sarah to send us out the PowerPoint. And if we have nothing else for us or any other questions or comments, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can move right into public safety. Those committee members are Kamer, Samples, Swirsky, Malik, and McKittrick. All committee members are present except for Swirsky. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'd like to move forward and call the public safety meeting to order. Like Sarah mentioned, all committee members are present except for Councilman Swirsky. We did host a meeting last week. We put one item on the consent agenda. Can I get approval of those minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, before we move into this resolution, like I said, we do have one item on the consent agenda, and I was reached out by Brian Bremer from the law department. We do have the new director of Summit County Legal Defender. I think she's still on. Her name is Andrea Whitaker. She wanted to come and introduce herself, and if we have one or two questions we can ask her, that'd be great, so we can move on. We are kind of behind on schedule. I do see her. Andrea, hello.
Hello. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I've met many of you before, but not yet in my new role here. But I've took over the Legal Defenders Organization in January, and I'm want to just introduce myself as that new role and to say to everybody on the council that I'm interested in working together. One of the things that you will a firm commitment from me is you will never hear that we do things because that's the way we've always done them. I am interested in, if you know me from my practice before, the rights of indigent defendants and the importance of that in our society is really what drives me. It's what drove me in my private practice. I'm committed to it. It's why I took this job. So I am open to exploring any suggestions, ideas, working with the council on anything that they think could benefit our population and our defendants. I'm open to that and I'm interested in working together on those things. So I appreciate the opportunity to say hello and nice to see you all again.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate it. And Brian, thank you for reaching out. I'll go ahead and see if there's any committee members or council members that have any questions or any comments, and we'll see if we have anything for you. We have Councilman Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Whitaker, for being here. Really appreciate that commitment. Love the opportunity to collaborate between council and the commission. I guess, one thought is just, sort of what steps have you taken thus far? I think one of the things that I saw reported in the paper was making sure public defenders are present for initial appearances. And, sort of what are the steps thus far? And then what are reforms that you see across the state that you think, might be a direction we're headed here in Akron?
Thank you. Well, some of the steps I've taken so far have been, as many of you I'm sure know, Joe Kodish, who ran this office for many years. He's a wonderful man, but when you have somebody in charge for 47 years, maybe some of the technological advancements hadn't been happening in lockstep with some of the things that we'd like to see in the legal profession. And so I've spent a good deal of time working on that, making sure, as Councilperson Malik indicated, making sure that there are attorneys at all the initial appearances. It was a surprise to me to hear that misdemeanor defendants that are in custody hadn't been represented at initial appearances. And so we quickly began to change that. And now every in custody defendant, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, has representation at that initial appearance. And it is an essential phase of the case. So I believe it's constitutionally required. Once COVID is over and out of custody misdemeanor defendants are brought back up to 7, they'll have representation as well at that initial appearance. We're working on moving that forward to some of our other cities, but in Akron, we began that almost immediately and have hired a staff to do that. In terms of things that I'm seeing across the state, I don't know if you all saw, but it looks like we've got some very good budget numbers out of the House for reimbursement across the state. It may be that we're actually reimbursed at 100%. Going forward, which would of course be fabulous for the cities and the counties across the state. I have had the opportunity, which I've really enjoyed, which is to meet with executive directors from public defenders at some of our bigger counties. And I'm meeting with them once every 2 weeks and learning about kind of some of the grant proposals that they've been involved in to do some targeting of things so they don't become felonies, social workers, really getting involved in some of the wraparound services that you can partner with some of our other agencies. And so I'm really, once I've kind of felt like the office is where it needs to be technologically and staffing, I'm looking forward to moving forward in those areas as well.
Thank you so much. That's really exciting. I guess one follow-up question. I know that one of the things you see in Cleveland and other places is sort of a right to counsel in civil things like housing and evictions. I think traditionally that's done through legal aid or other, more civil focused organizations. Are there any instances that you've seen in which that's done through Public Defender's Commission? Is that something you might be interested in?
Absolutely. And it's actually a very timely question, Councilperson. In December, the Ohio Supreme Court issued what's arguably what would be considered the first civil Gideon case, meaning a right to counsel in a civil case. So the decision from the Ohio Supreme Court in December indicated that if you are probate, if your child is being put up for adoption and your parental rights haven't been terminated, but you are indigent, you have a right to counsel, and that's a new thing. And as we all know, we have a very forward-thinking judge in our probate court. So Judge Stormer immediately picked up on that, contacted the county, and we are doing that representation in probate court for those indigent individuals. So we are open to my belief in the right to counsel and the duty we have to kind of provide that for our indigent, whether they're civil or criminal, is unabating. And we are open to discussing anything in that area because we really do believe it's so important to have proper representation in all areas of the law.
That's awesome to hear. And I know, the rescue plan potentially provides opportunities to do pilot programs that we might not otherwise do. So I'll be in touch with you. This sounds great.
That would be wonderful. And I'm interested too in one more thing. I know Councilman Kammer is it Kammer? Am I saying that right?
That's fine. Thanks.
Okay. I appreciate it. I know that you're on a tight time frame, but I'll be quick. I am interested also in kind of getting to know the community. So I would ask that any of you council people, if you think that there's a meeting or an event that me coming to and just meeting some of your constituents, if that would be appropriate, I'm open to that. I really want our defendants to know if they have a public defender. I want them to feel like, oh, I've met that lady before. I know that she cares. And so I am interested in becoming more involved, I think, than it's been in the past in the community. So please feel free, any of you, to reach out to me if you think there's an appropriate opportunity for that.
Thanks, Councilman. I appreciate you asking those questions. Andrea, I do see Councilwoman Samples, her hand's up too.
Thank you, Chairman Kammer. Just briefly, welcome, Attorney Whitaker.
Thank you.
This was definitely a pleasant surprise, and I'm glad to know that you are going to be stepping in some mighty shoes of Joe Kodish. I think Shamus already asked the question about the representation of individuals at the courthouse who have misdemeanors. So that was good to hear that you all will be making sure that misdemeanor defendants have representation. That's something that's been a big struggle in that area, making sure that they have somebody there, because a lot of them don't understand the law. So I will reach out to you because I absolutely would like for you to come and speak at one of my meetings. I think it's very important, and just want to say welcome aboard. I'm sure you'll do just fine.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Andrea, thank you. Thank you for being available today. And Brian, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to see you. Have a good day.
Thanks. Moving on, we do have a resolution. Sarah, do you have that in front of you? I did lose it here.
No problem.
Can you read it in?
Sure. This is a resolution supporting HR 1280, known as the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021, and urging its passage by the U.S. Senate and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And I believe that Councilwoman Samples, I think she's the only sponsor, but I'll turn it over to her if she wants to present.
Thank you, Chairman Kammer. This will be really brief because I'm asking for us to wait a week. I sent you all the PDF of the HR 1280 bill. I think it's very important for us all to understand and read it before we vote on it. But of course, time is of the essence because it has passed out of the House. So it's on its way to the Senate. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021 addresses a wide range of policies and issues regarding policing practices and law enforcement accountability. It increases accountability for law enforcement misconduct, restricts the use of certain policing practices, enhances transparency and data collection, and establishes a best practices and training requirements. The bill also enhances existing enforcement mechanisms to remedy violations by law enforcement, among other things. And it also does put money in a grant form to help those communities where they are having some issues as it relates to racial profiling. I do want to encourage my colleagues to read through this bill. It is 138 pages, but it is well worth the read. It did have some bipartisan support in the Congress, and I will tell you that Congressman Lance Gooden in Texas broke with his party and voted yes on this. And you're talking about someone who comes from a state where they ride around with guns on the back of their trucks. Since the day this bill was introduced and passed in the state of Texas, where he is a congressperson, they have had over 20 police involved shootings in just that small period of time. So he felt a need within that structure to say this is something that's well needed. And again, this isn't something that's about penalizing the police officers. It's about offering transparency and safety and making sure that there are procedures and policies put in place to make sure that people on both sides are protected. So again, Councilman Kamer, I am asking for a week to give council members an opportunity to read through the robust piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any committee members have any questions or comments? Councilman Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Councilperson Samples. I know that this is an important piece of legislation. Have started digging into it, and particularly there are some helpful summaries that are available as well. But I guess the one thing that I did want to say is that as we continue these conversations at the local level, figuring out what reforms we can implement to improve community trust, I think this is one place we can look, because particularly when it comes to data collection, there is a lot in this bill in terms of data collection, and the federal government can condition grants and things like that on this, but there's no reason why we can't make sure we're collecting all of this data. And in many cases, I think we are, but there's a lot that we can make sure is automatically put online and things like that. And so, I would just urge that. I think particularly in light of our last committee hearing, we see how valuable it is to really be focused on, looking at data on an ongoing basis as to, what the metrics we're studying are really critical to outcomes. And so I hope that as we look at this, finding some ideas to bring home is one thing we can do.
Thanks, Councilman. Appreciate that. Any other committee members? All right, council members. I do see Councilman Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Want to thank Councilwoman Mosey Samples for bringing this in. I did just want to say to members of council, if you want to, one resource that could connect you to all the links, because this is a robust piece of legislation, is to go to congress.gov. Congress.gov, and you can follow the evolution of this piece of legislation. And I'm asking that for two reasons. Because just as Congress.gov uses that format, it will give you insight to what we talked about, what we could do with OnBase for council, where we could follow the evolution of our legislation, and has comments and things. So because this is so robust, it has some things that we've been talking about in this community for a while, as far as an empowered citizen review board with subpoena powers. So look it over. It has it's just an excellent piece for those of us that are legislators to see how legislation evolves, but it also gives us insight to a tool that we could bring on a local level that will empower us, one, to follow our law department, but then two, to follow each other as we look at legislation. And the most important piece, it allows our constituents to follow our legislative process. So that's congress.gov. You can follow this. It has all the information. But again, to Ms. Samples, thank you, because I think we all know how important this is, especially over this last few weeks of what's been taking place.
Thanks, Councilman. I appreciate those comments. Any other council members? I don't see any. Councilwoman Samples, I do want to ask you, do you know where Senator Brown stands on this?
I don't want to speak for Senator Brown, but I have spoken to some of his staffers. He is supportive, but there seems to be some issues where they're working on a compromise with the immunity portion of it, the implied immunity. So I know there's some issues in there that they're trying to work through.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I took a little deep dive into this, and I have a few concerns. And then there also is some good stuff in here that I do support. And one of them that is a major concern to me is limits qualified immunity as a defense to liability in a private civil action against law enforcement officers. I mean, that's one of the things that really stick out. Obviously, you just mentioned that about a compromise with Brown, especially here in Akron when we're trying to hire roughly 50 new candidates to go through our academy. So I'll continue looking at it. It is 138 pages. I've been already looking at it and speaking to a few individuals. So we'll move forward and we'll see what happens. With that, Councilwoman did say she's okay with time. So I'll make a motion for time.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. Before we adjourn, I want to let everyone know, committee members and all council members, that next week, I did reach out to Deputy Mayor of Public Safety, Charlie Brown, and we will have the public safety meeting next week at 12 p.m. instead of 2:15. And the reason why, that gives us a nice 45 to 50 minutes of discussion, plus any possible legislation that might come in. So we're not in a rush around 2:15 and back up the rest of the committee. So hopefully that's okay. I know Councilman Neal requested that in an email, and that will happen next week at 12 p.m. So with that, we're adjourned. Thanks.
We'll move right into the Rules Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Malik. At the request of Councilman Freeman, Councilman Fusco will be chairing this meeting. Are you ready, Mr. Fusco?
Sure. I certainly am. Mr. Freeman, I see you. Would you like to chair, Mr. Freeman, or do you want me to continue?
No, if you would, please. I'm in a vehicle. If you would, please.
No problem, sir. You got it. Very good. First of all, I'd like to hear a motion to accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Very good. The ayes have it. We have one item, I do believe, on the agenda, the new legislation. This is a resolution urging the citizens of Akron to vote yes on issue 10, the Akron Summit County Public Library Renewal Levy at the May 4th, 2021. I heard a ding. Primary election to support the valuable and essential services that the library offers to the greater Akron community. I see we have the director here, Pam Hickson Stevenson, with us today. We've asked her to attend, and we certainly appreciate you taking time to join us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Could you share a little bit about what we're doing here on May 4th and what we're going to do in terms of supporting this issue 10?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm happy to talk a little for a few minutes about issue 10. I also want to acknowledge that we have one of our honorary community chairs on this meeting as well, Councilwoman Sharon Connor. Councilman Shamus Malik has arranged for me to speak at a Ward 8 meeting this week, and
Yes.
Councilman Jeff Fusco has been very helpful as well. So thank you to each of you.
Right?
Wanted to just share with you briefly that the library is asking for a renewal of its current 1.9 mil operating levy. As I said, it's a renewal. It is not new. It's not additional. It's the same 1.9 mils that we've been receiving for 6 years. It is critical that this issue pass for the library because it makes up 55% of our operating revenue. And so you can imagine losing 55% of your income, either from your personal budget or the city budget or your business's budget, and how devastating that would be. So as I said, it is critically important that this issue pass. It is issue 10. It will cost the owner of a $100,000 home approximately $4.21 per month, which I like to point out is about the same cost for your favorite large size fancy coffee drink. So I think for that price per month, that's a pretty good bargain. Frankly, I think the library is one of the best bargains you can find in the community. And furthermore, that boils down to about 15 cents a day. The library truly is a vital community asset. We provide millions of materials, both in physical format and digital. We serve all ages. The library recently was named a Star Library by Library Journal, which is a national library industry magazine. So we're very proud of that designation. And the last thing I want to highlight is that the Akron Summit County Public Library has enjoyed the support of the community through a local property tax for more than 35 years now. So I think that is a real testament to the support that we've received and the feelings that people have about their local library system. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hickson Stevenson. You know, some of us on council, I know, we're frequent flyers at the libraries throughout the city. And the thing of it is that whenever you go to a library, you see the whole spectrum of our community. You really do. You see the poorest of the poor and people with influence and people with money and the programming that's offered from the library. Well, what you guys offer to the community is the programming is amazing, and the app is very helpful, especially during these times. And I know you had a challenge, I think a year and a half ago, in reference to access to material, and that's important that you offer that, and it's available especially through apps, through the computer. That's and some folks that's their only access to material. And no, you guys do a great job. I'm obviously a fan. So, but I'd like to offer my co-sponsors if they have any comments at this time. Welcome to say something, Ms. Connor.
Yeah, I can't imagine our neighborhood without the library. Everything from after school programming, taking care of our youngest ones with story time. I mean, we all get our start in education by visiting the library and learning the little song play. But they've really branched out in the last few years to just reach everybody. Our library during the day in Goodyear does a lot of programming with Summit DD, where they come in and do puzzles and just come out and be in the neighborhood. And it's always refreshing, as Councilman Fusco said, to see the variety of people that utilize that library every day. I'm proud to be helping.
Thank you. Mr. Mallett, would you like to say
Thank
anything?
you. Yeah, just briefly, I'm a longtime fan of the Akron Summit County Public Library. But I think one thing I didn't realize quite so much until I started on council was how much our Northwest Akron Library works in conjunction with our Northwest Akron Community Center. And I think that those kinds of partnerships are, part and parcel throughout our community. And I think that, this funding obviously is key, but I think we can also all work towards kind of supercharging that relationship because these libraries, especially we've seen with COVID, are really necessary centers of gathering and places for youth, places for recreation, places for older adults. So I think it's just, critical part of us going forward.
Agreed, Mr. Malik. Thank you. Thank you for those comments. I see Ms. Mobian's hand is up. So Ms. Mobian, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I already voted for your levy. I wanted to do it early so I wouldn't sleep through the vote because I know that's the only issue on the ballot. The other thing I'd like to say is that not only do we all utilize the library, I work in mental health, and I know we have a lot of clients who spend a lot of time there, some good and some not so good, but I can tell you that your staff is absolutely wonderful in contacting us to let us know when certain people are there and when they need some outreach. So that is extremely helpful. And yes, I strongly support our library system because I know you can get movies and anything you could imagine through the library system. So thank you very much for all you do and for the help that you provide to those that are homeless and all others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mobian, for those comments. As I mentioned, if you go on your cell phone, pretty much everybody has one, you can access just almost anything, literally through our library, through their app, and it's I've used it quite often. Mr. Neal, I see your hand is up as well. You're muted though, so we can't hear you.
There we go. Thank you, sir.
All right.
I just want to say thank you too. I mean, I think outside of our schools, the library is the greatest asset in all of our neighborhoods. But Mr. Mobian hit on something. I think at some point in time, especially as we hear from Deputy Safety Director, and as we look at how to reimagine not just public safety, but community, the library plays such an important role, sometimes by default. I think we have to be intentional in looking at how we can better partner with them. One, to relieve some of the pressure off of them, because it's the hangout spot after school, and they get overloaded. And as Mr. Mobian mentioned, for some folks who may not have proper housing, it's the place to stay warm. And if you don't have a computer, they stay there. But how can we be more intentional in partnering with the library, providing services, and maybe even looking at some creative things where we create some special things for our youth after hours. I don't know, but what I'd like to do is just have a whiteboard and just dream big, and whatever we can do, and whatever we can't. But with these American Rescue Plan dollars, it gives us a chance to think of some things that we could do that when these dollars are going, we can still sustain it because we already have the infrastructure there. So I just want to say thank you. And I want to say now, I support this, but unfortunately, I won't be able to vote on it. But I do support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Thank you for your comments. And absolutely, I applaud that comment in terms of a continued support of one another and a relationship in terms of moving forward. We've already had one conversation reference to CARES funding that we have that the council is going to be responsible for. So we're working already toward something like that that's going to have legs even beyond COVID and things along those lines. So those conversations, we're going to continue to have those. Thank you for that comment. Any further questions or comments from anyone whatsoever? Okay, not hearing anyone. I would really like to hear a recommendation of a favorable report with suspension of the rules.
Make a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it. Very good. Thank you so much, Ms. Hickson Stevenson, for being here this evening. And I'm sure someone tonight will, this afternoon, I'm sure you don't have to come tonight, but we will make a favorable recommendation. And I'm certain that someone will make a recommendation that we do this as mayor and council as a whole. So hopefully we'll be able to pass this evening. And we stand ready to help however we can to see to it that this is passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
have another meeting, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Viviano.
We have just a few minutes before our next committee meeting, and that's the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance Committee.
Very good.
Those committee members are Fusco, Swirsky, Samples, McKittrick, and Connor, and that will begin at 3:15. We have just about 5 minutes. We'll go ahead and leave the live stream on, we'll get started about 3:15. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
I'm going to mute everyone just in case.
it's 3:15 and we can move into the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance Committee meeting. Again, those committee members are Fusco, Swirsky, Samples, McKittrick, and Connor. We do have all committee members present except for Swirsky. Mr. Chair, are you ready?
Why, yes, I am. Thank you. Yes, we will begin the Housing Committee meeting of Akron City Council. The Housing and Neighborhood Assistance officially is our name. The would like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of our previously held meeting.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
I hear 2 seconds. So all those in favor of our minutes from our previously held meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. The ayes have it. Very good. We will move forward then. We have actually 2 items that are currently on our agenda in our regular list of legislation. But we do have some guests here who wish to speak, from what I understand, on this particular, on these 2 pieces of legislation. So what I will do at this point is, aside from any other concerns or comments, we'll just go ahead and open it up to our guest. For our guest, so that you know, first of all, we welcome you and thank you for attending our meeting here this afternoon. We've had 3 readings of these 2 proposals currently that's on our agenda. And I'll briefly read both of their descriptions. The first one is the ordinance amending, supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 150 Environmental Health Housing Code to add sections 150 and 150.52 to create legal defenses in an eviction matter for tenants who attempt to tender all past due rental payments to a landlord and capping the amount of reasonable late fees that a landlord may impose to a tenant. That's the first item. The second item that we have is the ordinance amending and or supplementing Title 3, Chapter 38, Unlawful Discrimination. Section 38.01 definitions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Akron to prohibit discrimination on the basis of lawful source of income. So those are the 2 items that we currently have on our agenda. And I'm just going to go from left to right. I see we have Candace Eberhardt. I hope I'm pronouncing everything correctly.
Yes.
And
yes.
if I don't, please correct me, especially to our new guests. So yes, if you'd like to make any comments at this time, you're welcome to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak in regards to the source of income legislation piece that's in the process of being passed. I'm speaking, on behalf of myself as a housing provider, and I've used the program in the past. However, I do not use the program currently. I feel that mandating the program stifles the voice and the rights of the housing providers. Many landlords, including myself, are not fans of the program due to personal issues that have arisen from Section 8 tenants. My last go round resulted in $6,000 worth of damage to my property, and it remained vacant for 2 years because of the duress that was caused. At one point, I considered selling my entire duplex because I was so distraught, but my mother talked me out of it. Prior to this instance, another tenant who was very problematic cut the wires to the phone line, vandalized my property after I would not renew their lease. They also damaged the building and filed a complaint with the city for said damages, which I repaired immediately. Both were with AMHA tenants. The current tenants I have now have been there long term, are not on the program, and pay their rent timely with very little drama, if any at all. If a repair is needed, I take care of it immediately. One of my tenants is a relative, which has produced its own set of issues, but not on the level previously experienced. Now, don't get me wrong. I am all for the program because it does assist those who may need it with finding adequate housing for themselves and their families. But as we all know, our lives and personal choices are affected across the board by our own personal experiences. I understand that you feel we should be more open to the program, but at what cost? I am speaking to you as an African-American minority landlord. The tenants who caused the damage were white and the other one was Black. My views are not discriminatory in nature, but are based again on my own personal experiences. The tenants' needs as far as housing is concerned is an absolute priority, in addition to the rights of the landlords and/or housing providers. I feel there needs to be changes made across the board in order to establish a better relationship between the tenants and the landlords who do choose to participate in the program. Certain protections for the landlord also need to be put in place to make us more comfortable with renting to tenants who participate in the program. Until then, we need to be allowed to exercise our rights to choose who we allow to rent to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Everhart. Thank you for your comments. Certainly appreciate them. Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Camille Dickerson if you'd like to make any comments to the committee. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Camille Dickerson. I am a housing provider. I am also on the board of Akron Canton Real Estate Investment Association. And I don't want to say I represent them, but in a sense, I do. I represent about 160 housing providers who are within that group. And I just like to say, I'm glad I'm in a country that provides a safety net for people that are in need. I think it's important to allow individuals who need housing to be able to get it. And that's why that's why I became a housing provider, so that I could provide housing for those in need. And I'm glad to be able to do so. However, and I have no problem actually with Section 8 vouchers. I think the people that I have rented to who have Section 8 vouchers, for the most part, have been wonderful individuals, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they have a Section 8 voucher. My particular problem is with AMHA practices. I have been injured by AMHA practices because they have not provided information to housing providers once a person left the property. In particular, I had an individual who was an AMHA recipient, and they told me they were leaving in August. They were not able to leave in August. I allowed them to stay through October. In October, they told me they were not going to pay rent anymore because they had to pay it to their new place. In November, they sent me a notice saying that they were moving out November 13th, which is what I thought they were going to do. And then in December, when I expected my rent from November from AMHA said that they would not pay me because that person left October 31st and moved to another AMHA property. When I informed AMHA that the person told me they were leaving November 13th, AMHA said, you'll have to take that person to court and bring a negative judgment against that person. When I say that was in November, I mean November of 2020. Today is April the 26th. My date for court is it just got changed to May 5th. It was going to be April the 27th, but it's now May 5th. So for that length of time, I have not received rent. I did receive CARES Act money, which was wonderful, but the person did not pay their portion of the rent, nor did AMHA do anything about that person who fraudulently told me that they were going to be still staying in my property. So as I said, I don't have a problem with discriminatory practices for finances. And I think it's important for everyone to realize that some people do need assistance. And as I said, I'm glad to live in a country that does allow that opportunity. I do have problems with having to accept individuals who are under AMHA practices because I think that they are discriminatory against some housing providers.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I've made myself clear. I am not against I don't ever want to be discriminatory against anyone for any reason, financial or any other reasons, but to be a housing provider and not be able to voice my opinion or decide who rents my property is a concern of mine.
Understand. Yeah, for the Section 8 piece. And that's where I'm hearing that the issue is or one of the concerns. Now, my question would be, what is the, so AMHA basically said that it's up to you to take them to court to collect on, okay.
Even though I told them, I had the resident, well, I call her a tenant now, but I had the tenant write me a letter saying when they were moving. And the letter states, I will be moving November 13th. But she actually moved October the 31st. I did not find this out until December when, like I said, I didn't receive my money from AMHA from her in November. And I think that's unfair for AMHA to say, oh, hey, you can live in another place of ours, because she's living in another AMHA property when she's done a fraudulent thing to me. And I don't want, my lawyer keeps saying, Camille, you're not going to get the money. And I'm not trying to get the money. I want people to know that this person has done this to someone, and I don't want them to do it to anyone else. And AMHA is not helping me in this situation.
Yeah. Ms. Everhart, I see it. I don't know if you had any comments or anything relative to anything Ms. Dickerson had mentioned, but did you have any comments?
No.
No, okay, good. The one thing that we've heard since we've opened this up was whenever one goes to the housing authority and they want their unit, their house, what have you, to go with the voucher program, that there's a inspection process, so on and so forth. And so what has been your experience on that? Because one thing AMHA said, well, we're kind of a governmental entity. So as we all know, being a government person, we know sometimes there can be quite a few hoops. Did you experience that, or was it kind of not a bad process? Any comments on that?
Are you speaking to? Oh,
yeah, either one. Yeah.
As far as issues with inspection, again, I have not worked with AMHA since 2017. That's when this issue was. As far as Akron's inspection process is concerned, and them following through and coming out, I didn't have any issues. So I don't think that's an issue here in Akron, but I know it's a huge issue in Cuyahoga County. Okay. But of course they are larger than we are. And maybe there have been issues since 2017. I know back then I had no issues, but as to now, I can't speak on that.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will say that I guess I shouldn't speak for others, but I do know, as far as my properties are concerned, I've never had a problem with the process. I think that if individuals, and I've said this a number of times, if we as housing providers take care of our properties, there should be no reason for us to have any problems with the process. And I don't have a problem with the process. My problem is dealing with other issues. Like I said, with this individual, they did nothing to help me out. They didn't let me know that she was moving. They didn't tell me until December that she had moved.
Right.
And like I said, I think that what they're doing when they do the process of inspections is great, because it makes sure that that everyone gets a safe and affordable and a decent place to live. And that's what everyone should have. And I think everyone deserves that. It's not fair when we're held accountable for things that we're not responsible.
Understood. Thank you. Very good. I see Mr. Arn Engelhardt is trying to get in, I believe. So we'll give him a minute or two. I'll open it up to any committee members. If there's any committee members that have any questions or comments at this moment.
May I?
Yes. Oh, yes, please, Ms. Dickerson.
I also wanted to say, I think I made this clear. Section 8 vouchers, I tried to explain that to my committee, my board also. Section 8 is not AMHA. Section 8 is for individuals that need it. It's not only AMHA. So I have no problem with Section 8. It's like I said, my problem is with AMHA.
Understandable. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And there's the other legislation, the other piece of legislation, whereas, you know, the pay to stay, I believe, is what it's termed. And that way there, you know, they can, the tenant can stay if there's a delinquency and what have you. And then you're familiar with all that and what that constitutes, I hope. So I didn't know if you had any comments on that either. Mr. Engelhardt, we don't see you, but that's okay. I know you requested to speak to the committee, Mr. Engelhardt. So if you'd like to, you can make comment.
Unmute, Arn.
Okay, now I do see the mute. Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
unmute.
Okay.
I'm sending you a prompt to ask you to unmute. Go ahead and accept that. You are unmuted.
Hello, Mr. Engelhardt. Okay. Very good. I'll open it up. Mr. Engelhardt, if you can let us know whenever you're able to unmute. Is there any questions or comments from any committee members or council members? At this point, I see
Councilman Fusco?
Mr. Lombardo, I saw your finger up, so
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got a new computer. And for some reason, I don't know where the raise hand is, but we'll go over that later.
It's okay.
So I have a comment on the source of income piece of legislation. So from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this piece of legislation is all about when there's, well, it could be a lot of things, but from my understanding, one key piece is when you advertise that you have a piece of rental property, you just can't say, you can't say, you know, no AMHA or no Section 8. You're not allowed to say that because the landlord can certainly choose who they want to rent in their property. So am I wrong in this or not? Secondly, I just want to ask for a clear definition of what is Section 8 and a clear definition when we're talking about AMHA. If Camille is saying that these are not the same thing, can I have a clear definition of each, please? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lombardo, thank you for those questions. I see Ms. Rose is on the line here. I think I know what the answer is, but I'd prefer to yield to the administration, to the sponsors. I see Ms. Edvin is on here as well. If they're not prepared to answer, what we can do is we can get that answer to you, Mr. Lombardo, and to all of council. So can do that. Okay.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Oh,
yes. Okay. Hello, Ms. Nish. Is that you?
yes. Hold on. I'm sorry, I don't have a video right now, and I think Tamika is maybe able to jump in here in a moment. But to answer your question, Councilman Lombardo, you're correct that the source of income legislation would prohibit housing providers from advertising in a way that said, you know, no Section 8 or any, you know, listed that they were not willing to accept some lawful source of income. But you're correct, they would still have the ability to select a tenant based on a non-discriminatory basis, based on other factors, you know, what suited their property or them the best. So they can't simply use the source of income as the deciding factor in whether or not they're willing to rent to someone.
Okay, does that
help?
help?
Thank you, Ellen.
Okay, very good. And okay, very good. Mr. Malik, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and want to thank Ms. Everhart and Ms. Dickerson for speaking with us today. I really appreciate your perspective, and I think it's important that we hear lots of different perspectives. I know we also received communication from Akron Cleveland Association of Realtors, and I shared that with AMHA, and they provided some feedback. So all of the council members should have some feedback from Debbie Berry at AMHA by email. And I think, it certainly is an understandable concern that landlords have with regard to AMHA because there is bureaucracy. But I do think, just from my own perspective, when we look at the lack of affordable housing choice here in Akron, and when we look at how voucher holders are concentrated by race and by socioeconomic status in certain neighborhoods, I think that balance really favors making sure that, I think the burden placed on landlords by saying that you need to participate in this process if this person is otherwise the best tenant, that is balanced out by the benefit that we have in terms of providing housing choice to people who frankly are suffering right now, who aren't able to access affordable housing. But, that's my perspective. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malik, for your comments. Very good. I see Mike Freeman's hand is up. Freeman?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Busco. Hey, I just wanted to know, has there been any consideration? We're just looking at Akron on this. Has there been consideration of making this a county-wide issue? I'm wondering why we're just focusing, on Akron. Just a question, just a thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. I've done some research, a little bit of research. There's a lot more I'd like to do, but as all of council knows, we have been asked, we've been asked to pass this in a timely fashion. So we're going to be voting on this next week, possibly. In all likeliness, we're going to ask for a vote. I haven't had time to totally dig into this, but I can tell you this from our previous discussion that we had with a fellow from Cleveland, Mr. Malik had brought in an attorney that in Cuyahoga County, what had happened was the suburban areas, they have approved something akin to what we're looking at. And I guess it's not been introduced into Cleveland City Council as of yet, at least in terms of the discussion we had last week. So I can report that piece of it. But I also, from doing some research, understand that I believe in California, the state, and that makes sense, Mr. Freeman. I think your question makes sense, that something like this ought to be done. If it is to be done, it should be done on a county or better yet, statewide basis. I can understand the value in that versus just like going into like one particular market and then, so that's what I found so far anyways, Mr. Freeman. So yes, Mr. Malik, I see your hand is up.
Thanks. Just wanted to build off of that and make one point, which is I think that in a lot of respects, this is similar to the Tobacco 21 legislation, right? We're able to make changes with regard to Akron. The Summit County is able to make changes with regard to the townships. But the thing is they build on each other, right? And so, the experiences in the Cleveland suburbs help shape the way for Cleveland is likely to take this up this year, right? We're taking this up after seeing it happen in other cities. When we passed Tobacco 21, it was passed in a number of other suburbs. And then shortly thereafter, the governor actually took this up. And I was surprised that, Governor DeWine took this up, but he did. And so I think that's one thing that we can see is that, there is a such thing as sort of momentum and experience. And so our charges, whether this is applicable or helpful in the city of Akron.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Malik. Any further questions or comments from anyone? Yes, Ms. Dickerson, I see your hands up.
I just don't see the hand raising thing, so I just use my
That's
own
okay.
hand.
No, you just do that and I'll make sure I'm trying to see everyone. So I'll try not to miss anyone.
Thank you.
But yeah.
I guess I do have a question because my clarification is Section 8 versus AMHA. So if I am a housing provider and I say I will not accept anyone from AMHA, and this legislation passes, are you saying that, well, will you do anything to tell AMHA about the practices that they have against the housing providers? Say the one that I just mentioned. I mean, if that's something that you guys can handle, then I certainly would not have a problem with that. But if we're held accountable for certain things, but AMHA can still continue to do what they're doing, I don't think it's fair. However, like I said, I have no problem with the Section 8 portion of it because that is the financial aspect. AMHA is not a financial. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I would again yield to someone from the administration to answer any questions.
Okay.
Hello, Councilman Fusco and Ms. Dickerson. I think that we can take those back. I have been I've been texting AMHA to see what the problem was with your particular case. We can work on that. We will work on that because, you know, the Section 8 vouchers, you know, we're only changing the anti-discriminatory portion of our law, saying that you cannot discriminate against Section 8 vouchers, which, you know, houses veterans, the disabled, seniors, and single mothers. So we want to make sure that those individuals are not, you know, cut out of the process before they even meet the actual landlord. And I think that once you meet that person, you still have the opportunity to do all of the screening that's necessary to see if you want that person in your property. We're not saying that you have to take this person. We're saying to give them the opportunity to at least meet with you and see if you guys bond, you know, so that you can get to them. Thank you.
And I think that's my thing. I have Section 8, fine. AMHA, problem. That's
and I don't want to like put AMHA on, you know, on trial for lack of a better term. But I thought part of your question was how is it going to be handled and what's the outcome if you don't go with the Section 8? And Ms. Rose, can you answer that? Because from what I understand is this would then go to the Civil Rights Commission. They would conduct and for you, Ms. Dickerson, and Ms. Eberhardt, the complaint would be forwarded to the Civil Rights Commission. They would then they would conduct an investigation. And then after the investigation, they would then have a hearing, I believe. Ms. Rose, can you explain?
That is correct. They would do the basic investigation and recommendation and look through, but it has to be proven that you denied them housing based off of the Section 8 voucher, not off of something else that is not in the law around, you know, the anti-discriminatory law. So, you know, if there's something that, if the background checks or something of that nature, then that's totally amenable. But if there are landlords that strictly say, we're not going to rent to you because you have a voucher, or we're not going to rent to you because you have CARES Act dollars, and we want to make sure. So we want to make sure that that is not happening here in Akron.
I understand that.
What would be, I mean, ultimately, if a landlord would find that the commission would find a landlord in violation, what would the outcome be for a landlord?
So the outcome would necessarily be that they would be for any other, they would be deemed that they discriminated against a tenant, and so they would have to have, there would be maybe some fines and costs and other things. I'm going to turn it over to the attorney, Ellen, because she actually did that legislation.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Damika. So generally, the Akron Civil Rights Commission has broad enforcement powers. So it could be whatever's appropriate under the circumstances. It could be essentially that tenant would have access to that housing provider's properties, or potentially it could be a fine of some sort that's commensurate with the harm that was caused. So say that person was unable to find, suitable housing. It would be, some kind of fine that compensated them for the harm that was done to them based on the discrimination. So their powers are broad. The commission's powers to enforce the ordinance are broad.
Okay, very good. What would be the maximum? What would be the maximum fine or what have you that they could levy?
So it would be based on the harm. So I guess it would be depending on the amount of harm that was caused to the victim of the discrimination. So I don't think there is a specific, it's not like a crime where the fine is $5,000, per offense. It's based on the harm that was caused. So it would be a reasonable penalty or a reasonable remedy based on the situation. So it's very fact specific.
Okay. So it's kind of open-ended in terms of exactly what, if one would be found guilty of. Okay, good. Want to establish that. Okay, is there any other questions? Or I see Mr. Engelhardt. Mr. Engelhardt, your name is up here, and you're unmuted.
I am trying to get into the conversation. Could you shake your head if you do hear me? Because
you do.
Oh, good. Because I can't get the visual up. I have some quick comments. Then the preamble geared this legislation to COVID-19. And the UCR also stated that the purpose of the legislation was to mitigate the number of evictions during the pandemic. Well, our pandemic is probably gonna be gone maybe in the summer, maybe in the fall or whatever. But if that is the case, would this legislation then be revoked?
Don't believe so. I yield to the attorney. I don't think it is, to be honest with you, Mr. Engelhardt.
So it's going to be permanent no matter what the preamble calls, whether it's there's a pandemic or not. Okay.
Excuse me. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to make note of that question and follow up and get an answer. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The next thing I have is the main purpose of paragraph A and B is pure and simply that the tenant has the money. And if that's the case, that should be pretty much of a slam dunk, except that paragraph D also indicates that the landlord has the opportunity of having other issues other than the money. And those other issues maybe, who knows, a barking dog at 3 a.m, trash all over the place, complaints by surrounding tenants. So I see this legislation somewhat as the same as what we got right now. It's a matter of money, or are there other issues? And I just want to give you my philosophy as a landlord. Pure and simply, I look at this landlording as being economics 101. I have a product. It's a rental. It should look good, should be up to code, and the income that I get should be enough to help me survive. But then again, the income should not be so great that the tenant just goes down the street and goes to the other landlord. And pure and simply, I would assume that the tenant is going to whatever tenancies that they can find that match their needs, and the price would be in there. So pure and simply, to me, the tenant is in the marketplace. I am in the marketplace too, and we are competing. Economics 101. That's my feeling about landlording.
Okay.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Engelhardt, for your comments. I'll try to get some answers on those, your first question there. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any committee members have any comments, questions, or council members at this point? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you all for attending. We certainly appreciate, especially our guests, for attending. We appreciate you joining us here this afternoon. We appreciate your comments. Thank you all very much. And with that, the Housing Committee is adjourned. Thank you all. Sarah, is this it for the day?
That is our final committee meeting for the day. Council will meet at 7 p.m. tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.